incompetent. Does he still want to fire the governor of the central bank that he's quoting in his speech? And if not, what is the intellectual process that he went through to change his mind? The Honourable Leader for the Opposition. Will I fire the Governor for the Bank of Canada? I have a few questions for the member of the bloc. If a mechanic doesn't do his job, what happens? He's fired. No? If an electrician doesn't do their job, what happens? They're fired. If the Governor of the Bank of Canada, instead of doing his job, which is to keep inflation at 2%, and instead borrows and prints money to fund the government's deficits, causes inflation that has now led to poverty among Canadians, he's not doing his job, which means he wouldn't be fired. In the real world, if somebody doesn't do their job, they're fired. I will introduce the Government of Canada to the real world by firing people who don't do their job. Yes. Questions and comments.
For Elmwood, Transcona.
But the question was, why quote somebody that you think should be fired?
Never answer. But I have to say, Mr. Speaker, it's a little hard to know where to start. I mean, obviously, we're starting from some different positions, and indeed a different way of understanding the situation that the country finds itself in. And the Leader of the Opposition had a lot of things to say. He said he would prohibit his ministers from participating in the World Economic Forum, I suppose as Stephen Harper did when he was Prime Minister, and announced from Davos that he would be raising the retirement age in Canada from 65 to 67. That's what Stephen Harper did at the World Economic Forum. I'm glad he won't be sending anyone there so that when they make announcements like that, they can be accountable in this place. Then he talked about a Blue Seal program, a good idea, one that they promised in 2006, and after 9 years of government did nothing for. Then he talked about giving $4 billion to gatekeepers in this budget for housing. I presume he means the For Indigenous, by Indigenous housing strategy that is being funded to the tune of $4 billion in this budget. He had the audacity to criticize that after he invoked the example of the Squamish First Nation that is doing a good job of building housing. So, should we be surprised that he doesn't understand what's in the budget when his party announced they were going to vote against it before they even saw it? Probably not. But the question is, after saying all of those things, and he likes to point out people saying things and not following through, why is it that Canadians should believe him when the government that he was a part of did not act on the very things that he's talking about today?
That's right.
Leader of the Official Opposition.
First question. Why quote someone I want to fire? I quote members of the Liberal government all the time, and it's my plan to fire them in the next election. So as for the Blue Seal, we did not promise that in 2006. We did promise to speed up foreign credential recognition, which we actually achieved. However, we need to go further, and in the last 8 years, it's only gone backwards. So we're going to bring in a Blue Seal standard, a merit-based standard to test the people who are professionals so that they can qualify just like those people who are born in this country. And the member finally says that I simultaneously criticize the government spending on housing while praising the First Nations who remove gatekeepers to get things built. Let's be clear. The First Nations in Vancouver did not build the housing with money from government. It is private financing that is what builds the vast majority of the housing in this country. We don't have a lack of financial ability to build housing. They're spending $89 billion on it. The problem is we ban housing from being built in the first place. We get the gatekeepers out of the way, build more homes, spend less money. It's common sense. Let's bring it home.